I want to introduce a specific case studies in cyberarchaeology, which is one of the main projects I'm dealing with in Italy in classical archaeology, the Vulci3000 project. But let's start with cyberarchaeology, and I just want to give you some insight about the meaning and actually the philosophy of work, and because I understand that terminology in the digital domain of archaeology is difficult, and several definitions are controversial. So I give you my view, at least, and in that sense. And cyberarchaeology is a branch of archaeology research dealing with digital simulation of the past. So actually is based on the simulation and interaction with multiple virtual scenarios, and also with it's able to study digital embodiments in the cyberspace. So even in the past, we were dealing with virtual archaeology, basically the static reconstruction of the past of societies, of worlds. In cyberarchaeology, we are more focused on the dynamics of data and real-time performances using virtual reality in the field, for example, and also combine different data in the observation process. I don't want just to spend much time in the theoretical approach. There are several publications on this topic. I prefer to work with you today on the case studies, on the use integration of different technologies, and so on. But because we are dealing with a very important archaeological site, we need to know some background. And Vulci is particularly famous worldwide for funerary archaeology. And this is one of the outstanding examples you can see in Rome, the Museum of Villa Giulia, the famous tomb of the chariot, orientalizing period. And this is one of the main examples of aristocratic tombs excavated in the last 150 years or so. I want to recall also that objects from Vulci are spread out in many museums in Europe and the United States. Of course, also in France. In the United States, because of the Grand Tour, so travelers were actually going to Etruria, and they were basically very curious about, particularly in the 19th century, about the mystery of this population, the Etruscans, and they start to be in love with this object, and they brought this object to the States, and they start to be part of private collections. Well, this is the one of the most recent discoveries of orientalizing tombs. It's a very articulated funerary monument. Is known as the Tomb of the Silver Hands, another late orientalizing burial, and so-called because of the silver hands belonging to a funerary statue here. You see here that we started in 2014 to record all the chambers and the monument by laser scanning. But this is just, I mean, the background of funerary research on Vulci. And actually, our project is focused on something else, and the reason of that is that too many efforts were spent on the investigation of the funerary art and on the necropolis of Vulci, and not much really on the study of the city. So we decided to, in 2013 and up to today, to work on the city and to investigate the transformation of the city from the 10th century BCE up to the Romanization to 80 BCE and later on. Why is this city so important? Well, because it is intact. There are over 1,500 years of a continuous occupation, and it was one of the most important city-states in the first millennium BCE, part and partners of the Dodecapolis, so the Etruscan Confederation of 12 cities. So the project had to deal with the combination of different technologies and ground penetrating radar, geophysical prospection, multispectral drone, and of course archaeological excavation. Well, why so much in place here? Well, because of the size of the city, and we have on the right here the geolocation of Vulci, so near Rome. It's about under 20 kilometers far from the Fiumicino airport, and here you have a very nice digital terrain model, extremely accurate. It's 1 centimeters of accuracy here, 6,000 drones photos recorded, and several flights, and the result is what you see here, the reconstruction of geomorphological tufa plateau of the site. So this is a big challenge because the city was occupying all the tufa plateau and also part of this area. We'll see later on why this is important. And what we know is just 5% of the entire settlements. Not new in archaeology, so we have a great example in Faleri Veteres, where geophysical prospection cover all the Roman city, but we cannot archaeologically investigate or dig over 100 hectares of urban occupation. It's not doable now, and maybe it's not doable tomorrow, and even in next generation. Also, we might think if it's really necessary to dig extensively. So on the we have two charts here about the Etruscan occupation, the Roman occupation. So the Etruscan occupation is basically split here in cemeteries and city. So the city is based on occupation of the plateau and out of the plateau in the Iron Age. You see that 30% is here and 25% is here. The reason of that, and this is of course the entire settlements, including the cemeteries. In the other chart here, you see that the Roman city is 89%, and the Etruscan is just 11%. So we know there is a clear contraction of the city in the Etruscan times, and we will see this much better and more in detail in the next slides or so. Let's start with an overview of the plateau. Actually, when I say 5%, I mean the archaeological excavations from we know from the 18th century and up today. The great temple here, this is a very important Roman domus, and that's the southern side of the city, was occupied by the Roman Forum in the 3rd century BCE. This is the Decumanus right here. This is one of the several GIS simulation made by our graduate students here at Duke University. But you see the legend, so the city walls are right there in red, the road network, and Roman street grid reconstructed by aerial photography and drone photography. And I think very interesting, this part is the combined interpretation from ground penetrating radar and aerial photography. So this this part is related to the Acropolis and just partially excavated, but still visible from drone and aerial photos. So you see that actually there's an intense occupation of the city. There are necropolis all over the plateau. We can estimate over 30,000 tombs you see that 39% of the entire size of settlements here is right now calculated over the necropolis. So the necropolis are part of it, and because of diachronic occupation, of course, there are so many in particularly in the northern region of the plateau. So how the city look like? Well, this is a nice old graphic reconstruction of the Etruscan city based on aerial mapping, and this is one more recent simulation by procedural modeling, a digital reconstruction of the Roman one. Of course, both of them have to be updated because we have new discoveries every time, and there's still excavation going on in Vulci right now in Italy, and some colleagues are working on, particularly on the excavation of the cemeteries. What our project is dealing with. So this is actually a very important chronological chart of the Vulci occupation, and the chronology of Vulci is based on city and necropolis. In yellow, you see actually the chronology related to our excavation, so the Vulci3000 project from 2015 to 2019. But it's very important to know that the site started to be a proto-urban settlement in the early Iron Age, 10th century BCE. In relation to the territory, that's important, I believe, to link landscape and settlements. You see here the transformation of the landscape and the occupation of the landscape in the late Bronze Age, final Bronze Age, and early Iron Age. So from left to right, we see that there are several dots, and they all belong to individual settlements. So the Big Bang, we can see here, there's kind of a Big Bang of landscape occupation and development of settlement is the final Bronze Age. See that the distribution of site in southern Etruria, central and southern Etruria. Well, what happens in early Iron Age is what we call synoikism. So the fact that there's a constant new demography, concentration of the population in small in fewer settlements, but much bigger. In fact, you see that they are all concentrated in a few, but look, we don't have to misunderstand the data. So concentration means very likely a change in the demography, so more people, not less people, and they concentrate, they migrate in settlement that will become shortly city-states like Vulci. Let's compare Vulci here under 26 hectares with other city-states close by. Tarquinia 150 or 150, Caire under 60, Veii under 25. For Vulci, it's important. You see here this the Tufal Plateau here, and there's this chunk actually of settlement which is out of the city walls. It's called La Pozzatella. This is occupied in the Iron Age. We don't know yet if it was discontinued in the classical period, but very likely it was, because it couldn't be included in the city wall. So this actually calculation is, or estimate, is based on the plateau plus the Iron Age site. So very likely the city-states watch a bit smaller. Again, Vulci, Tarquinia, Caire, and Veii. So that to have an idea of the occupation of the city-states and in the region north of Rome, which is right here. and also the proximity of the city-states. So Vulci is close to Tarquinia, which is close to Cairo, close to Bay, but culturally are very different sites, are very different cities. Let's move on. Okay, again, the plateau in red, green, and blue. This is our region of interest. Zoom in. The big temple and our excavation right here in the middle. The Roman decumanos connecting the west gate to the east gate. The Etruscan Roman temples, 5th and 4th century BCE, then Roman. And finally, the Domus of Cryptoporticus, 7 BC, 2nd century BCE, 2nd century CE. Finally, the so-called building with apse, not easy to date, probably late building, 3rd century CE. So this is the, I would say that the geolocation of the main building. So I think it's easy to understand why we decided to excavate here, because we are close to a very important public building, but we are close also an aristocratic Roman domus. So basically, and the decumano. So we are in a very important area. Years before the excavations and also during the excavation, we start an extensive geophysical prospection. We start with magnetometry, but then we use a ground penetrating radar. Magnetometry was not successful because of the noise of the volcanic rock. So basically it was very difficult to interpret the data by magnetometry, but georadar was extremely successful. And here you can see actually two systems in action. So the spider with 25 centimeter channel and 250 megahertz, and the one with 37 centimeter channel spacing. This is thanks to the collaboration with the Ludwig Boltzmann Institute of Vienna. And here at the bottom, the 16 channel IDS X 200 megahertz, and this was used in collaboration with GeoStudy in 2016. The preliminary results of the physical prospection are here, so I think they're actually extremely interesting and important because of the extensive identification of Roman buildings in the northern part of the Decumanos here, and also for other public monuments we identify in the southern part of it. And also we know that this is our excavation in the middle, that all this area was monumentalized very clearly in the Roman period. And you see that foundation walls are very identifiable, that we have a clear evidence of buildings, and also we can reconstruct easily the plan of them and a general map of the Roman phase. See here an example of this part was presented by my student at the AIA conference in Boston, and you see here there are several layers that we have identified by GPR, and then here a possible comparison with another domus, Roman domus. And here that you see that we use a different processing, we can better see the settings and also the identification of specific foundation walls. And you know that the GPR is like an MRI. So basically you have a cake of layer, and we found evidence in this area of over 2.5, 3 meters of archaeological deposits. So there is really a lot to dig. And that's because the Roman city overlays the Etruscan one. This is particularly exciting, I would say, discovery. So you see that this is a very late building, perhaps medieval, but built on top of a Roman basilica, entirely identifiable ground penetrating radar. This is the one on the top was reconstructed by digital photogrammetry. The one on the bottom is by GPR in 3D. Okay, and this is the 2D map of the same building. See here, we have a clear parallel in Herculanum. This is the publication Herculanum, not the size, but the shape. And here you see the apse in the yellow and the aisle and etc. at the bottom here. So if we'll go back, see here the etc, the apses, and here saying apse and aisle and etc right here. So they're they look very similar. Again, no digging here, but just a predictive model of the monument. In remote sensing, we start to integrate geophysical prospection with multispectral drones. Let's start with an old photo. This was processed by Giorgio Pocobelli in 2011, but the photo was, I think, 1984, if I don't mistake. See the Cardus Maximus here, the big temple, the Domus, and you see that this is the Roman Forum. See there are several buildings around and facing the Decumanos here, right? Again, no one of them is excavated. But back to the multispectral. So we believe that the future of drones in archaeology is in the use of multiple sensors, not just one, the usual RGB, red, green, and blue. So in our project, we are particularly focused on the infrared and red edge spectrum. This is me with it's a fixed Wings EV. This is one of the first pilot rat work with us. And here, this is one of the several examples we have of multispectral and image processing from our student Katie McCusker. And you see the anthropogenic soil here in the dark brown, and where we can possibly track the extension of the entire occupation of the city, the Etruscan one. And in this processing I made by the calculation of the vegetation index, extremely useful in the summer, because in the summer, you know, the crops are high, so you have a lot of vegetables, grass, trees. You have to penetrate that. You have to see what is underneath. And in this case, we use the vegetation index. So we calculate the vegetation growth index, and we know that, of course, in archaeological elements can deeply influence underneath, and the soil as well can influence the growth in relation to the vegetation in relation to specific archaeological structures. In the simulation, you see also the slope of the Roman Forum from south to north in this excavation. Again, by multispectral analysis, we identified several T-shaped tombs. Right here is the northern area of the plateau, out of the city wall, of course. And here, very likely, Finery roads with all the T-shaped tombs facing the same road. I know if it's visible, but this was very clear in the first processing. Again, that's in an image processing made in 2018. That's not LiDAR, but it looks like it's a 3D point cloud created by a 3D simulation by digital photogrammetry. This is famous Tumulus of Cucumella, so orientalizing funerary monument. And here you see the same monument from the top. This is infrared. This was excavated very badly, unfortunately, and by Bonaparte in the 19th century, and also by other scholars in the 20th centuries. But if you see in the processing here, there is another circle, and we believe there is another installation. So it can be another tumulus, or it can be another funerary monument, but was not identifiable from the ground. So let's see now the excavation. I'm happy to present you just very preliminary result. The excavation is still going on. We didn't dig in 2020 because of the COVID, unfortunately, but we are planning to finish the first cycle of 5 years of excavation next summer, 2021. Here we are, and that is the excavation trench in 2019. Very briefly, so you see that the area in Travertine and area in Cociopesto. And because of the different elevation of the rooms here, we think that all this complex, it's not just one building, but it's a complex, was built over artificial terraces in order to connect the different elevation we had in the southern forum with a different elevation we have much lower in the Decumanus right here. So basically the idea was to have a terrace built monumental complex facing the Decumanus and very visible from all the forum and the Decumanus. This is an imperial and republican building, so there are different phases, but they're Roman. And the one we identify very well is the 1st century CE, the Travertine complex. That's the one in red. Okay, this is the. Let's go more in detail on the interpretation of the building. See, there are actually several niches for statues, and actually 6 of them, and we'll discuss much better and in detail about this hall and the interpretation of structures. But you can see that it's a very important building. And the position of the building is oriented with the Roman city, and you see the niches of statue right here. See the travertine slabs are disconnected here, and I believe because the instability of the soil, in particular in this area. But they are decorated with important marble, color marble, and also you see the threshold, the monumental threshold right here, actually facing the Roman Decumano. So we can imagine here a very nice, important, monumental complex built in several phases in between the late Republican period and the first imperial one. The decoration of the walls are in white and red plaster, and also in decorated with molded frames like the ones you see here. This is the southern side of this building. Perhaps an altar with statues. So it's not finished yet, the excavation of this part. So we are still debating about interpretation, but you can imagine something like that. And more important, also the use of African marble from the Teos Island in the Augustan period. This marble is very well documented in several monuments in Italy in the Augustan period, and most of them are public monument dedicated to the imperial cults or dedicated to specific gods, and they are decorated with marble imported in Italy from the Teos Island. Here is one of a concentration of tiles, and here the color, and so you can imagine the articulation of colors, plasters, and molded frames in this area and all over. The building was used up to the beginning of the 2nd century CE, I believe the 1st quarter of the 2nd century CE, and the tentative reconstruction of the wall decoration. See, there are several parallels in Cosa and the Ager Cosanus, for example. And again, excavation trench by thematic layers. In this case, the thematic layers in JS are related to different material: travertine, calcepesto, masonry, nemphro, opus picatum. See here. And very important also with the presence of a column here. This area is still to be excavated, but you see that there is a clear connection between the building and the decumanos here. So that's the complex again, with several rooms oriented with the Roman city. And then what we found underneath. So this is one of the most important discovery of this building. So there is a cistern completely sealed by the building in travertine, and that's particularly intriguing, and that's why kind of the mystery we are still discussing in our excavation. So that and I like to introduce one of the most important topics of excavation, also the technological challenge for us, the documentation of cistern and well. So water is one of the key elements for interpreting our site and our building as well. So you see here that the phases of excavation. So there was a big slab here covering the entrance of the cistern. This is nemphro, very common in Etruscan time, not really in Roman times. And the position actually of the cistern, which was entirely recorded by digital photogrammetry and very well geo-referenced and geo-rectified in the general trench of excavation. We have also a very nice virtual reality tour into the system. So everything you see here in this excavation is paperless, is 3D recorded. We don't have any notebook, paper notebook. We have just digital notebook. All the database is in 3D, and we are going to publish everything digitally as soon as possible. But it's really important to emphasize that the building and the system, in particular the system, is the first one in southern Etruria digitally documented in 3D by photogrammetry. And that's, I think, is a good news for archaeology in general. So how new methods and also cheap and quick method of digital recording help a lot to increase the level of the accuracy and level of the documentation. See here the shaft. There is a tunnel actually in the system connecting, very like the system, with the southern part of the city. And also we are able, because of the digital photogrammetry and the 3D model and the simulation, to calculate exactly the system volume, but we can also calculate the remaining deposit volume. So basically we are excavated over 13,000 cubic meters, but we still have 22,000. So we know what we have to deal with. Back to the cistern, see the beautiful section here. There's a feeding conduit here, wall curbstone, and this is a magnificent examples of digital recording of a channel where we have different phases of occlusion and obliteration. Also, you see here that because of the use of ground control point by recorded by GPS, we have a clear we can calculate the orientation of the channel, and you see that's going underneath to the south of the building, and very likely, as I said, connecting the southern part of the city. There is a silt pit at the very bottom of the cistern, and here that what well documented the sequence of obliteration. Yellow clay with vertical tiles, occluded shaft, tile wall, and brick wall. So see how much energy the Romans put here in order to seal these tunnels, in order to block the water coming from the tunnel. They didn't want any water in the system, and they decided to seal completely and obliterate the system with a big slab of travertine. So this is I believe it's extremely important for also reconstructing the several phases of abandonment of the system, which is full of material, by the way. Oh, this is what we are proud of because of our photogrammetry team put a lot of energy. You see that it's not easy to go inside. Here you need an helmet, you need a special equipment, you need a digital camera, we need proper lighting, and so on. But if 10 counterpoint, 350 photos were enough, and the total station to georeference and reconstruct completely and in a very accurate way all the system and the tunnel. See here control points. So back to the water system from 2018 excavation. See there are systems here, wells, there are small pools and pipes, channels, and so on. So there is a lot, very complex articulation of water system in different phases, which can interpret, at least initially, by archaeological finds, because the chronology is crucial for all the sites. Well, one of the biggest problems we have in this case is that the chronology is actually right now focused on a lot of post-depositional layers, abandonment phases, and so on. And we need to approach more stratigraphies in phases in order to have intact context. But even in post-depositional phases, we have evidence of very important objects. And this is an example. A ritual offering, possible ritual offering with inscription "sh" in Etruscan, local pottery, so for sure 100% Etruscan, and other example of architectural elements, Etruscan, again, in color, like blue, the usual combination, red, blue, and white here, and antefissa here, and part of the temple, very likely part of a temple or sanctuary, and the big one, the most important one, in this coming from the system, was a sculpture in Enfro representing a lion head. See here. Then I asked our colleague Flavia Morandini, who is a specialist of iconography of the lion in Etruria, to date this sculpture. And well, of course, we need more work on that, but should be very likely late initial 4th century BC, so just before the Romanization. Okay. This lion head should be part of an architectural decoration, so it's not a funerary sculpture. Other example of ritual offering, 3rd, 2nd century BCE. This is a model. This is the bottom one comes from the North Gate ritual deposit in Vulci, Now it's in the museum. This one is for the top one from our excavation. That they look the same. It's a model of porticos, which recalls, of course, the ritual representation of it. Same for this model of a tower. The entire tower from the north gate and here from the excavation. That's just fragments, but they look really very similar. 3rd, 2nd century BCE. North gate ritual offering, so you have an idea of the entire example of from the museum of the North Gate deposit. We don't have yet this deposit, but perhaps because the porticos, because the tower, maybe we are in the same range of ritual offering. More. From the excavation, past the positional layers, so we have other two very important finds. Left on my left is the marble head and another marble erma here. What are they? Well, I believe that the left one is clearly a Silenus, and Silenus Roman marble. Belonging to a fountain. See, this is a clear element of fountain, and the water was coming from the mouth. More difficult to interpret the Irma because we missed the face. There's a part of the helmet, so that's my tentative interpretation is Minerva, representation of Minerva. Again, other important finds, very important and rare finds are rock corals. So rock corals are extremely rare in urban context, but they are not rare at all. If you see the distribution of rock corals in several sanctuaries across the Mediterranean, they are ritual offerings to several gods and goddesses, such as Athena, such as Demetra, Kore, Hera, and more. Well, the closest parallels for Vulci is the ritual deposit of corals found in the sanctuary of Gravisca near Tarquinia, so in Etruscan. So we believe that all this connection between the water and gods and offering might be related with water cults. And the important water cult is already documented in Vulci because of the water. And it's explained because the healing effect of waters, which is protected by gods. And so this worshipping should be, which is well studied in Gravisca and Piaggi, could be also the case of Vulci. Other example, not from Vulci, spring water sanctuary like in northern Italy, Marzabotto, or water in cistern and Faleri Veteres. In Vulci, we have also thermal baths, so we have seen that the mineral actually components, and this is a recent analysis of the water from thermal baths. And so there is a justification, scientific justification of the importance of water, beside worshipping, beside the ritual offering. So the water is important because of the healing capacity. In this old map and publication, there's a distribution of shrine and sanctuary in Vulci. It is 1998. You see that several of them are inside the twofold plateau, so basically inside the city walls, but others are out. The sanctuary, see 11, 12, and suburban sanctuaries in Vulci. So very likely we see a clear distribution of cults inside and outside the city. We need, of course, to study more in detail. But the biggest question is, after so many slides, so many simulation and 3D visualizations, how to interpret this architectural complex. I would think to I would hope to respond this this question after the last excavation in 2021, but it's part of our job to work step by step and change mind if it's the case. I would start with comparative association, for example, and here, of course, I can just pick some object in order to simplify the discussion. We have over 6,000 classified archaeological finds, so a lot to study. But if we can compare the Etruscan and Roman phase, you see that on the top, what we have already discussed, the Silenus, the Minerva, and the hairpin needles, perhaps related to wedding rituals. There are hundreds of them in the rooms, in the floors, made in Cochopesto particularly. So they belong to this complex. Other architectural elements in marble, other decorative shells, very likely concerning decoration of fountains. And for the Tuscan phase, we have ritual offerings, architectural elements, so basically concerning shrines, sanctuaries, and the rocoral, so dedicated to Aphrodite or Demetra, so it depends. And other architectural elements. So this is what we have. A lot of ritual activities, right? And this is my very tentative interpretation of the complex, the shrine of Salus Augusta, Gia, one of the most ancient Roman goddesses associated with baths and healing waters. And this perhaps was built over the Etruscan sanctuary, just because we see actually the foundation of this building overlapping another building, which could be Etruscan. Because of this, of the distribution of the statues, so I put just two examples on the left: the Roselle, the Clan Bassi House, and the Augusteum of Narona in Croatia. So you have an idea of, how this building could look like in the Roman phase. But it's out of discussion the importance of ritual activities and water cults here. That's why the parallels with Urb Salvia in Macerata, so-called Edificio delle Acque, the water building, is perhaps a good support to this interpretation. So, in short, what's new after so many years of excavations and geophysical prospection? Well, we start to know the archaeological stratigraphy of the city, never documented stratigraphically in the last under 50 years of investigation. Excavation plus remote sensing is able to tell us more about 70% of the city space and urban space. The waterscapes of the city shows a relevant concentration of cistern wells and water system around the big temples. And all the system attacks are probably connected with other sacred areas, such as the Sacellum of Heracles and the ritual piscina near the East Gate. There are all the other architectural example of reuse of Etruscan buildings in Roman times. So there is a clear urban continuity in public spaces with maybe a different cultural identification. And then the transition between the Etruscan and Roman identity seems a slow process, not something sadly identifiable in 280 BC, which is the only historical information we have, the Roman occupation of Vulci. So basically, we deal with an hybridization cultural process where we can find different cultural models and not simply a replacement of the new one versus the old one. So the 300 almost years of Republican Roman phase is not just purely Roman. So it looks something different. That's why I like to discuss and to study what cultural hybridization means in the transition between the Etruscan and Roman cities here and in Etruria more in general. So at the end, also, we have a new Roman urban plan we can see just in the early imperial period. So this is clear in the construction of the Roman Forum and the Roman grid of roads and more. So this is a new phase of life of the city where I see a clear discontinuity. Let's go to the cyber world for a bit, and that's the virtual excavation 2019. I have to say that again that we have documented systematically in 3 dimension all the layers. So we have hundreds of stratigraphic units in 3D, and now we are working on the volumetric calculation of all of them, and also the virtualization of all the process. This is made for now in Unity 3D. Of course, this is a video. I'm sorry I cannot show you the VR in by the virtual reality headset. We use Oculus Quest, Oculus Go, HTC Vive, and Cosmos, and others. But if I can go back to Paris next year or 2022, I can hopefully have a chance to do it. So this is important because we teach in VR. We want diggers and also students, future students, to know the excavation also from different media. So of course we have GIS, we have 3D digital photogrammetry, we have a lot of simulations in place in different systems, but this is particularly effective because of the accuracy of the data. And also we are dealing with over, in this case, the 2,500 photos of the photograph, orthophoto plan of the site. This is really a new thing I'm starting. It's a part of a new project, Duke, virtual reality neuroarchaeology. This is my brain, actually, that you see, and the EEG on the left, and in the center you see the eye tracking. So where my eyes are focused on in the virtual simulation, in 3D you see which neurons are active, possibly enough in my brain. But the idea, see that there's a kinesthetic, the theta waves here, there's kinesthetic effect of the experiment. So we want to basically to see how diggers, non-diggers, and archaeology, non-archaeology react in a virtual scenario. So what happens in our spatial embodiment when we stimulate our brain to walk through the excavation in remote and so on. You can imagine that this was started a year ago, at least theoretically, and we have to stop the experiments because of the lab. We have constrictions, and of course, because of the COVID, we cannot go to the lab. But still, we can do a lot of work in remote. It could be very important also for the next season. We'll expect to bring EEG devices in the field and also to have more interaction with this instrument, particularly the combination of eye tracking and EEG simultaneously. I'm going to conclude with the 3D repository. So when we talk about the publication, well, in archaeology, of course, there is a lot of discussion, different standard, different ideas. This is what we deal now, and what we decided to do at Duke University is to invest in a open access platform named More4Source. Actually, the new release will be available hopefully by Christmas or so. It's a project-based data archive that allows researchers to store, organize, share, and distribute their own 3D data. Look, this is not just visualization, nothing to do with Sketchfab or this examples of commercial 3D. This is based on 3D databases, metadata, and so on. We want to upload up to 6,000 classified archaeological finds, 2,500 stratigraphic units at the end of the excavation, then with the 3D landscape, geophysical prospection, and more. How it looks like? Well, this is just a short video, but you see that there's a Attic red figure, Silenus. But this spot chart is recorded by laser scanner. Then you upload it in the database. Then we have all the metadata connected and so on. So we estimate to have 1,000 of them very shortly. So by the spring 2021, and hopefully we can have all the excavation online available for the future, not just for our publication, but also for the future of archaeological investigations. And we believe in the democratization of data. That's why we want to share what we investigate, and I hope that we can do it shortly, so everyone can start also new studies or new interpretation. I want to thank you with this slide, which is dedicated to my team. Hundreds of very dedicated students, researchers, junior faculty, and more from over 15 countries. Several from France. That's why I'm very proud of them as well. And I hope that we can work at least with part of the team in 2021, and hopefully in a different world after the COVID, or in a sustainable COVID. I don't know. Okay. Thanks.